Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Big Business Blueprint live interviews, where we speak with one business leader and understand their personal and startup growth playbook, fundraising lessons, products and services they offer, and how they think about their market expansion, customer acquisition and retention, attracting talent, and building a tight knit workforce, and so on. I'm Bhuva Shakti, based in New York, and the founder of WalletMax. We are a global community of startups, investors, and executives focused on increasing sustainable funding access, especially in climate tech, fintech, deep tech, and AI sectors. If you're a fintech startup, don't miss out the fundraising event from WalletMax. We have startup pitch competitions and investor panel discussions. It's on April 20th as part of New York FinTech Week. The tickets are now live. You can see the Luma registration link scrolling below in the screen. In my Startup Growth Playbook interviews, the one we are in today, I typically invite a startup founder or co founder and interview them about their growth lessons. But more importantly, what differentiates them from the crowd? How do they prioritize impact along with profits and planet? We deep dive into their personal, professional, and startup journeys and their mission to uplift. Today, we are speaking with Paul H. Richardson Jr. Paul is the founder and CEO of Tumbleweed, a purpose driven technology company helping families navigate aging, caregiving, and legacy planning with greater ease and compassion. With a background in organizational psychology and 20 plus years in healthcare and technology, Paul has led programs, scaled innovation, and championed inclusive, human centered solutions. Paul's startup Tumbleweed is a digital legacy and caregiving support platform that helps families organize records, capture wishes and life stories, and make complex decisions easier before and after a loss. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Bhuva. It's wonderful to be here. And to all of our listeners and folks joining us in from around the world or watching later on, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks for joining us, Paul, taking time to share your background and career path. Could you share a little bit more? And what's your unique secret sauce? Maybe what's the pivotal moment from your life that has led you here?
Sure. Secret sauce, I will have to think on that for a second, but I would say a pivotal moment was in 2022. I took a about a 4 month road trip across the US. And on that journey, pretty early on, I realized I was holding on to some grief with my grandparents. My grandparents were very involved in my life. I have very young parents, and so they were kind of like secondary parents growing up. And what I kept coming back to was not only their passing, but really the experience leading up to death. Aging really was kind of the broader kind of scope of things. I worked in healthcare at the time, so I was very engaged in conversations, and I was a secondary caregiver for them, being out of state. But really, what I kept coming to was, how is there not more technology in this space? And so really it was driving across the road, many thousands of miles with my two dogs and an RV, and then starting to ponder the question around legacy and aging. And then that turned into what eventually became Tumbleweed.
Thanks for sharing that, Paul. And when people think about legacy planning, they think about material aspects, but not
Mhm.
necessarily
Yeah.
caregiving, right? So you have taken caregiving and legacy planning into Tumbleweed. Where do you see opportunities and challenges in your sector? And especially within the US, do you see a scope for market expansion? Is there a need for this in the rest of the world outside US by any chance? Tell us more.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. So I think, as a first time founder, this idea that I leaned into to start building, I feel lucky in the sense of it was the right idea at the right time, because of our aging population, right? Not just in the
Mm,
US, to your point, but really in a lot of places around the globe. We have a very large aging population. Here in the US, we call them especially baby boomer generation, right? We have
yeah.
10,000 plus that are turning 65 every single day. And they just really are kind of starting to age into. So those were the first year of the baby boomers just turned 80, right? And so they're really kind of starting to navigate that journey. And what that has done is it's really started to exemplify not only the need for their own planning, and to your point about legacy versus caregiving, on the legacy side, legacy is really everything that we leave behind, at least for me. It's way
Yeah.
beyond any sort of financial or even tangible things. It's the memories, it's the words of wisdoms, it's the photos, it's great great grandpa's mirror, right? That's been passed through generations and kind of those stories that came with it. And so for me, legacy, to your point, is not financial. My grandparents worked very hard, love them. They did not have financial things to leave to our family. They just didn't. And a lot of folks don't. And so, really, we try and remind people that it's far beyond that. The reason why caregiving started to become such a huge focus was as we were starting to talk to potential customers early on, we thought, okay, let's talk to folks who are aging themselves, starting to try and get organized. Maybe they're thinking about it, but haven't done a will or haven't updated in 30 years. So we thought maybe that was our market. And as we talked to them, really we began to identify over and over again was our ideal customer is actually folks like myself and my aunt who
Mm.
are primary caregivers for an aging person. They're the ones who are, coordinating doctor's appointments, they're coordinating paperwork. They're the ones who are starting to feel the pressure as their aging parent or neighbor who they're starting to step in and help more of. They're feeling that pressure. And they're the ones that we can really help through technology the most. And so that was part of kind of the evolution as we started building. Globally, there's a lot of places around the world that are experiencing this. I'll just talk about a
Mhm.
few.
Yeah.
Japan is a huge area where they're talking a lot about this. They have way more older people than they do younger generations. India is also a place that they're talking about this as well, and even Spain. Actually, last year in an insurance conference, I had a great conversation with some investors from Spain. Same thing. They're experiencing this where they don't have enough younger people as family members who are able to help care for the aging population. People think caregiver, my background's healthcare, and they often think about nurses or people who work in assisted living homes. But family caregiving is a huge component. And family caregiving is the things like, okay, I have to coordinate getting my mom to her doctor's appointment every Tuesday. In the midst of that, I also have a job and I have three kids and, right? And so it becomes
Yeah.
those tiny things can really, just weigh on people. And so that's what we're trying to do to be there for the family caregiver and navigate the journey. And also, too, to help them feel connected so that they're not alone and do check ins along the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is not just a US problem, it's a global problem. So everyone needs this solution. So when someone starts thinking about their aging parents or someone they need to care for in their later ages, do they have to think about it only in their 60s, 70s? Suddenly they realize, oh, I have to now take care of my parents or someone else close to family, though not in an assisted or care facility or with a healthcare facility. Or they can use your solution anytime earlier than they turn 60s or 70s or the time comes for caring for them.
Bhuva, that's a great question. So I've learned over the last year, been doing this now for almost 3 years from idea to kind of where we're at today. And one of the hardest things for me to learn was I believe and see the value in planning ahead. Right.
Yeah.
My mom is 60. We've already started some of those steps. She's got a long ways to go, but I now see future issues in legal, financial, insurance, and so on, right? So we're starting to do that now. But what I had to really come to realize was is that the average person knows that they need to take action, especially a caregiver or people who are seeing their parents start. Oh, do they have a will? Oh, what do they want to have happen? Like these conversations are happening either in their mind with their siblings, with their partner, spouse, but unfortunately, most people don't take action. So what we have really found over the last year is that we need to be there the moment something big happens. It's
Yeah.
ideal to plan ahead, but really, most of our customers and users are more willing to take action when a triggering event has happened. My mom just fell and broke her hip, and she needs to be in a skilled nursing facility, but it's only covered for a part time. She's coming home sooner than we anticipated, and she lives alone. I don't know how we're going to manage that. My father was just diagnosed with early onset dementia, and I'm starting to see his cognitive decline. I really need to get him into an assisted living home, but he's pushing back. So we're finding that people are more willing to start to get organized and take action when those events are occurring. So it's much more, I've started to think about it as what we're building for is it's much like you think about roadside assistance for a vehicle. Now, I know you're in New York City, so probably most New Yorkers don't have vehicles, but in the rest of the world, most places, more people generally have vehicles that they're using. And so most of us pay for roadside assistance, even if have safety net of if we need it, I can call and a tow truck will be there in 30 minutes to pick me up. Right. And so we're kind of doing something similar. It's that we're there when you need it. Now, my personal mission has been to help people get further ahead of that because the further upstream that we can get in planning, in coordination, in connection, we can prevent not only we talk about prevention in healthcare, but we don't talk about prevention in death and dying. And that's really
Yeah,
part of what we're doing.
exactly.
And so that's the ideal. And the reality we're finding is that most people, when something major happens, that's when they want to connect with us. So we can at least lean in there and start to support them. But the ideal is earlier is always better.
Thanks for sharing your parent stories. It's so much inspiring to see that your company has shaped up from your grandparents' journeys and your parents' needs. And it's more like a role model of what people could expect and how early they should start without waiting for a event to happen, right? It's like same that you mentioned roadside assistance. You keep paying for it and wish you never have to use it, but if you have to use it, thank God it's there, right? So
Yeah,
thanks for sharing that
of
all.
course. Mhm.
Now, in the current political landscape, right, not only in US but globally as well, a lot of big corporations and private investors are shifting priorities. Meaning, if it's going to give you faster returns in a quicker turnaround, then that's what they want to invest on, lean on. Things like caring, wellness, are taking priority, but not on a large scale. It's mostly left to the consumer and the consumer initiative, right? So, based on your extensive experience in organizational psychology, why do you think investing in mission aligned projects important for the long term, not only for us as a country, but for globally everyone, right? So, how do you balance profits and return on investment on a mission aligned project like yours?
Yeah. For me personally, mission aligned is enduring. Politics are ever changing, right? Whether you're in a
Yeah.
two-party system like we are in the US, where it's a pendulum that might be swinging one way or another, right? Or in other parts of the world where maybe the setup is a little bit different. But politics are, I mean, they may stay in a certain place for a period of time, but that's always temporary. Mission-driven organizations, we're focused on the long term and the politics. We have to find a way to navigate that journey, but it's a better investment because we're in it for the long haul. I'm not saying that obviously, an exit, whatever that exit could look like, is not on our mind. It absolutely is. But a mission driven organization is more enduring. And also too, from my personal experience, now I'm a first time founder, but I have been on this journey for a few years now, and I've met a lot of founders and investors and people who have succeeded. And personally, someone who is building with lived experience, I am living what I'm solving every single day. And so when the runway is tight, or I'm not taking a paycheck and I'm picking up a gig job on the side to be able to sustain things, the reason why I keep doing it is because we are mission driven. If it was something that's not mission driven, where it's like, oh, it's an idea, we tested it, we took in some investment, maybe we got into an accelerator, and we brought in some friends and family money, but you know what, it's not going to work, or I'm not driven. I'm excited about something else, and I shut it down. right? Sorry, investors.
Yeah.
Now that's part of the process. But for me personally, I think it's kind of a mix. It's the enduring nature and it's the founder commitment. I think those are two big things that for me, I believe stand out in that. And I think to the politics piece, I just wanted to tap into no matter where you are in the world, politics are going to impact it. And so you have to think about how do you work within the constraints of a current situation. And so one of
Mhm.
the things that, I've really tried to exemplify and share with our current investors and other future investors is politically right now there are potential changes as it relates to any program, right? Medicare and
Yeah.
Medicaid are two programs that are a big topic here in the US. And so for me, part of what I'm sharing with them is that what I know, because I've lived this, is if you're a family caregiver and there's less resources that are available from the government, the state, the city, whether it's dollars, whether it's rides for free through a ride sharing service that are provided by Medicaid in your city, a lot of those things are going away. Well, guess who has to stand up? We do. We have to step
Yeah.
up even more. And so for me, I'm like, no, this is actually really important and helpful and very timely. So I think it's about not only what's happening, but how do you communicate that back to an investor or even to a partner or customer?
Yeah, exactly. Purpose-driven products are more long-standing, right? Meaning, as long as you've built your business model more robust, hopefully it can be flexible, but still continuing to scale because as a business owner, you want your business to thrive regardless of the external situation,
Yes.
right? That's everyone's goal. Now, with the current and past experience that you have had with the Tumbleweed now and in the past as an industry leader, have you faced any challenges specific to constantly changing US regulations, especially because you operate in the US at the moment? How do you prioritize things like privacy, security, accessibility, sustainability, and inclusion in your product and service decisions?
Yeah, I think I'll speak about it in a couple of different ways. One, I'll talk about my past experiences working in healthcare. One of the things that I learned in healthcare that when I worked in healthcare, obviously we were just in the US. We were not global at that time. But state by state, there's a lot of different, state requirements that sometimes are more restrictive than federal or less restrictive. And so our
Yeah.
approach in healthcare was always look at every state and the federal mandates around, to your point, cybersecurity, privacy, HIPAA, whatever the it is, and build to the highest standard, right? So take
Mm,
all of the standards and then pick the top one so that you're always protected because it's harder, especially at
exactly.
the early stage. We can't, could we build to a state mandate? We could, but then when you want to go to another state, then you almost have to reconfigure and make updates to build to that standard. So for us at Tumbleweed, one of the things that we did, and I'll talk specifically about cybersecurity and even some of the components around AI, is we're watching the European Union where they're having a lot more restrictive nature overall in some of those aspects. And so we're watching what's happening there, not because we're building there yet, it's in our strategy for long term, but because things could change here. And so if we started to be mindful of what's happening around the globe and can we build to kind of those requirements, if it makes sense, there's some that are just out there, of course, but I think it's really think about what's happening in your current state, but also what's in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and start to integrate that in if you can. So I think those are some of the things that I learned working in healthcare that we did that I've really brought into what we're doing at Tumbleweed.
Thanks for sharing that, Paul. You just made my day. I come from a compliance background, and I could not emphasize enough how to ensure privacy, security, accessibility, and similar considerations early on in your cycle and be as inclusive to whatever
Yes.
best you could, right? That way, you're not stuck trying to get into a market or expand your product or service because you'll be blocked at some
Yep.
regulation somewhere and you don't know what the future holds, right? So,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, well, I'm glad. And to be very candid with you, compliance as someone who is I want to break things. I like big, I feel like thinking big, right? And complex. And I'm like, we'll figure some of those things. I appreciate that I have really trusted advisors and partners and team members. And I did work in HR compliance for a large part of my career, which taught me a lot about it will come back and bite you not having thought about it earlier. So, yes, it is always good to consider compliance. And, even for folks like myself who I appreciate it and I like the structure, it's more of I like to push boundaries too, right? So it's finding that balance. Um,
Finding that balance. Yeah.
yeah, but we appreciate folks like yourself because for me, if I had to stay in compliance, I would struggle.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. It could come back and bite you big rather you spend that extra time. It's like your design principle. You are defining your product or a service. You put a lot of thought into it, build all this ahead
Yeah.
so you don't have to struggle later. With this being said, how has success been for you? Are you able to share some case studies, examples of customers you have won personally from Tumbleweed? And while you're sharing your success story, I also wanted to ask you about a mistake you made. How did you navigate? And are there any valuable lessons?
Yeah. Sure. So we initially, when we were building, my strategy was always to go business to business. That was
Hmm.
always in my belief system. I worked for large organizations most of my career. I've worked for startups. I had a boutique consulting practice, but B2B was always my strategy. And I knew that the market we were going into, we were looking at health, insurance, and finance early stage as we were building. And I knew that sales cycles with all of those types of organizations as a partner take a long time. So we needed to get some early traction to get users, but also to get a little bit of revenue. And so we built to go direct to consumer early stage simultaneously while I was working the sales cycles for the longer term relationships. So for the
Mm.
first 15 months, our revenue, which was, in the thousands. So we're very happy about that. But it was little dollars, right? But they helped. They all came direct to consumer and word of mouth, right? Like that's where it started. And and let's see here. We signed the contract in December of 2024 and launched our first partnership with Wellaby Inc. Wellaby is an insurance company based in Des Moines, Iowa. They operate through most states in the US and we're available to their members. And that partnership was a really pivotal moment for us because it solidified the idea and it also marked that there is a belief in what we're building at the insurance level, not coming from this space. I've always worked with insurance but in a very different capacity. I was on the organization side of making benefits related decisions, and so I'd never actually worked with insurance and selling to insurance, so it was a very different pathway. When we closed our first contract in 15 months and when I heard that the average is 18 to 24 months, that really made me and the team feel very good about not only did we get our first partnership with an insurance company, but that we also did it slightly ahead of the curve. Um, and we're continuing in a partnership. Our partnership has continued on. We had a new contract that we signed for 2026 and beyond. Super exciting. We actually expanded the opportunity to touch even more of their members. So that is very exciting. And we have last I checked, I think it was 13 or 14 other potential carriers in the pipeline. And it just takes time. It's constantly working it's validating what we're building. It's taking, what's working well with Wellaby, what product updates are we making, what responses are we getting, what usage are we getting, and using those to continue to sell our next partners while simultaneously still seeing that direct to consumer grow a little bit here and there. So there's that. On the mistakes, absolutely. I could probably spend a whole series on just things I've learned along the way that I would do different today. Now,
Yeah, me too.
could I have done it different before? Maybe, but I'm someone who does not believe in regrets. There are a lot of things I would do different, but I don't believe in regretting the decisions I made personally or even professionally. And so I take each of those as learning experiences. That's just my approach. So I'll share with you, and I won't go into details about the who, but we were actually in conversations for another contract that was a pretty significant one. It would have been our largest contract. And I thought we were getting really close. And I think we were, but I think some internal shift must have happened. And so when we were getting to the place of kind of finalizing our deal points, where we're kind of getting to that, okay, let's really get this papered, let's start to actually get legal to vet these updates. They pivoted on kind of the what they wanted in the contract. And it was a
Mhm.
significant shift that it's still a good opportunity. It just means that we need to build more features in without the guarantee of a bigger revenue number up front. And so it was kind of that evolution shifted how we develop our product, right? If any partner came to us and said, "Hey, we're really passionate about this aspect of your roadmap, and if you can prioritize that, we want to commit X amount of dollars." Right? And then we can look at that and assess from that point. And we were going to be able to do that. And it was something I was very excited about, and it's still in our roadmap. When that conversation shifted and they said, "Oh, well, we actually need to do how we're going to pay you." And I was like, then that's not possible. We can't
Yeah,
guarantee that today. It is still on the roadmap, but until we've reached X number of users and X amount of revenue, it's not going to be built, right? And so I think I share that story in that really I think the mistake was is I feel like I missed signals about where I felt like we were closer maybe than they were. And I'm still trying to uncover where wires got crossed or where I misread a signal. Um, and so I think that I can't undo it. And we're still in conversation and we still have a great relationship. So I'm glad that those things have sustained. But it was a, as someone new in selling a new product, right? I came from a well-established organization, so it looks very different. And when you're a startup, you can't build everything and you don't have the resources, whether the resource is time, whether it's money, whatever it is, we don't have as many resources. And so you can't guarantee as much. And so I think it really is, I'm just trying to go back through that sales cycle and think about where did things maybe take a turn that I didn't catch in the moment so that I can make sure in the future, in that moment, we can assess it better. And maybe it's not the right time. Like if it's like, hey, we want these 7 features and you only have 3, then it's a, hey, you know what? Let's hold this conversation and let's circle back when we're at 5 of the 7 and revisit, because then I'll know how much closer we are to having all 7. So that was something that, and that was very recent. That just happened at the end of last year and a little bit into the beginning of this year.
no, thanks for sharing that. And one thing I learned from what you shared right now is non-negotiables, right? There is only so much you can negotiate up until a point where you walk away from a deal, even though it's the best deal that could happen, because there are things that you cannot compromise on because you have to run a business to its long term sustainability. So I think that's one of our valuable lessons that many founders can also learn instead of looking back and thinking, I could have pitched differently, I could have connected to that investor differently, I could have met that partner differently or signed a contract differently. Trying to take lessons and then moving forward on what next you can do better is great advice. Now, do you get conflicting advice sometimes when you have a challenge in your business? Do you take advice from your advisors? And if, let's assume, two advisors give you conflicting advice, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, we get so much advice, questions, feedback, whatever you kind of want to call it, that I do think as a founder or even just a leader in general, it's really important to be able to synthesize information. Now, I'm going to
Mm,
share something that was so counterintuitive that I've been learning throughout my career, but I really learned it in building Tumbleweed. Growing up, I always heard the term in one ear and out the other, right? It's in
yeah.
one ear and out the other, like parents, especially talking to kids. I say something to you and it's out the other ear, right? I heard this a lot growing up. And so I really was like, oh, that means listen, listen intently, take everything in. That is actually the worst advice that I think any person actually can receive. Now, I'm not saying don't be present, don't be open to the insight, but it really is, I think, our job as humans, but especially as founders and leaders, is take in information, quickly assess, and then discard what you don't need, or at least file it away, right? Because there's so many things that could be from their expertise, from their lived experience, from their belief in what you should be building. We just don't know what's happening in their world. And so everybody, honestly, we all like to hear ourselves talk. I'm talking a lot. We like to hear ourselves talk. And so I think it's our job to really listen intently, be curious, and to take in what makes sense. And also to like, we need conviction, especially as a founder, because at the end of the day, the investor's not in bed getting up for you. You're the one who has to get up and keep going, whether times are
Yeah.
good or bad or everything in between. And so sometimes you'd have to be able to say, I hear you, and maybe we'll reassess it in the future, but no, we're not doing that right. Or, wow, you know what? You're right. I think we need to actually pivot, or we need to adjust, or strategy needs to change. So those are some of the things that I consider. Um, I have found, for me personally, and maybe this is just my style, I don't know. I'd be curious about other founders. But for me, the best advisors and strategic partners, or folks who've been engaged from any time along our build or even in my past, are the ones that provide insight, but are also there as a sounding board to hear what you're thinking and help you kind of process through what's in your head, and then just offer insights along the way and maybe question assumptions that you're sharing, right? Versus just someone who comes in and says, well, this is not the right strategy. You need to stop selling to insurance and you need to sell to table stores, like whatever, right? And they have no kind of basis behind it. But I've found, for me, I think the best, most trusted mentors, advisors, and folks in my network have been the ones who dig in, but also create space for thought and curiosity and honestly vulnerability and transparency. And that's really that's been one of my best learnings in this journey. Is it's not always easy, especially as a first time founder, where it's like they're going to steal my idea, right? That's a very common feeling. Give me an NDA, right? It's not going to happen until you're a
Not
certain
gonna happen.
right. But I think what I found so much is people truly just want to help far more than I ever realized earlier in my years. And I'm so grateful for that, because that's been the best part of this journey. It's actually been a very healing aspect of the journey. Is if you ask, you'll be shocked at how many people actually do help. Now, it may not be the help you really need, like maybe it's financial, but they can help with some doors opening, or maybe it's you need help with whatever it is. But it's really been the ask, and good people will be there to support you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sometimes you just need those mentors, advisors, or even peers and team members who
Yeah.
can just listen with you and shape the insight or solution with you instead of giving a direction, right? And keeping the connection warm, building relationships is not typically for what you want when you want, but for the long term. You build relationship and then grow over time. And
Yeah.
when you need something, they need something, you're there for each other. I mean, that's something that's becoming a lost art. I would say that I want to emphasize for all founders trying to network and talk to mentors and advisors, not be transactional and ask
Yes.
for things that you need at the moment, but rather work together to see where they can support you in their best capacity, not may not be the exact thing you need. Right? I couldn't agree more on that. Thanks for sharing that, Paul.
Yeah, and I love that you're right. It really is especially as startup founders and in a fast-paced environment, it can get very transactional.
Yeah.
And but honestly, that only gets you so far. I moved to Iowa technically through my parents and grandparents. I'm from the Midwest, but I didn't grow up there. I was born in Arizona, and so I moved to Iowa as we were building Tumbleweed. And it was very interesting. One of my co-founders, who's an Iowa native, said to me, probably about 6 months after I was there, she's like, Paul, nobody is able to do what you do. And I was like, I don't, okay, what does that mean? And she's like, I don't know anybody that comes into Iowa and Midwesterners and people are just opening doors for you and just, warm hands. And I was like, well, what do you think is different? She's like, because not only are you curious and you connect, but you follow up, you're a relationship builder. And it really does make a difference. And I'm grateful that that's been always been my approach. I think that's just my nature. Um, but I think that that really has made a significant difference in what we're doing. And also, too, in the space we're in, like when you're talking about death tech or age tech and caregiving, I mean, it's a space that's uncomfortable, but it's also something that takes a lot of warmth and trust and connection. Um, and so I think that that's definitely been a part of our success in the journey.
Yeah, active listening and building warm connections can never go wrong, whether you're building a business or something else in your
Or just making new
professional life.
friends, right? Like,
Yeah,
or dating.
it's
That's a
always
different,
great.
different podcast, right?
Definitely, definitely. Now, what was one decision that most improved your company's velocity? Let's say from your early stages to where you are today, whatever that stage is. Is it like a product thing? Is it a go to market thing? Is it more a financial thing? What do you think about the hardest part of going from pilot success to repeatable scale?
To be honest with you, I think we're actually in the midst of that exact situation right now. And I'll
Oh,
speak about
really?
it. Yeah, I think we're actually living through that in like as we're living today and growing. One of the things that when we first launched, obviously we're all talking about AI, right? But AI has
Yeah,
actually been around for much longer than the general population knew about it. And as a non-technical founder, that was not my background and expertise. Like I understood it at a high level, but I've definitely worked really hard to understand it better. So when we were first building Tumbleweed, I was not fully prepared to lean into bringing in more AI support. And because I wanted it to be in a better place. And since we have leaned in and since we've launched CC on our platform. CC is our agentic navigator. It's our, CC stands for care coach, right? So it's kind of
uh,
built into our platform. It's there for our users. That has really allowed us to be there much more like roadside assistance, where it's I can't worry about a will today. I just need to know what to do right now. And so I
yeah,
think flipping what we built on its head is essentially what we did in the last 6 months. We started with platform, but really, what I've come to realize is that CC is the tip of the spear. CC is the engagement engine. CC is the soft tool that we can stay connected with our users, folks who are reaching out with questions. We can do follow-ups, check-ins, nudges, etc. And so I do think that as AI has improved and as we built out and continue to build out our AI agents, I think that leaning into that has allowed us to expand and provide more and better services to our users. Because when I was first building Tumbleweed, one of my beliefs was, because AI was not where it is today, is that we were going to need a support center, right? A customer support center,
yeah,
whether it was here in the US, whether it was in another part of the world that's more affordable, right? And because people sometimes just want to talk to a human, one of the benefits of pivoting from building for an aging person to their family caregiver is, as a general, right? Not true for all, but as a general, they're more comfortable with texting or with chat engagement, right? And
yeah,
so that was something that allowed us to support our ideal customer profile more. And as we dug into it more, what is it even that they were more comfortable with it? It's that they're like, I don't want to sit on a phone and call someone. I don't have the capacity to do that. I need an interaction, whether it's on my phone, whether it's on a website, whether it's in an email, where I can start a conversation, put it away, go back to it, put it away, right? I can jump in and out of it because other things are happening. And so I think that that just really allowed us to actually improve what we're building. And then I've come, really kind of shown and showcased that our platform, that's the long term, right? That's the digital filing cabinet where we're going to help people capture insurance, legal, financial, and what we call wishes and stories, right? It's the I want a celebration of life on Lake Michigan, play these songs, here are the photos, here are my words of wisdom, here are my favorite memories, and so on and so forth. But those are things that happen over months, maybe even years or even decades potentially. And so that's been a bit of our evolution, especially over the last 6 months.
yeah. And you don't want to overwhelm your customers, right? They are already in an emotional roller coaster trying to challenge this situation, and then when they come to you, you don't want to tell them, hey, do these 100 things. They just want to know what I need to know today, tomorrow, right? And
Yeah.
like you rightly said, everyone wants to talk to a human, but do I have to make time in between my
Yeah.
day-to-day work and family commitments to try to find time, make a phone call to get a simple information, right? So it depends. It's all a balance of what you can offer, what they can take at that point
Yep.
in time, and maybe there is a need for a human
Yep.
interaction, and there are scenarios for that, right? So trying to find the right balance as a founder to offer what works well for your customer and at what point in time, right? Not
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
everything works for your customer all the time. Context matters,
Yep.
situation matters. So that's also something we need to be mindful of. In your journey, are there communities you have relied on during your growth or transition from the corporate sector into the startup sector? Tell us a a bit more about the support system from a community and mentorship and advisors that you have for your startup.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that, to be quite honest, surprised me the most about coming into the startup space was, and I'd be curious, but I do feel like, a lot of early stage founders that I've spoken to, we're nervous, right? Because these are our babies. We hear that term a
Yeah,
lot, right? These are the ideas that we've been percolating on for days, months, or maybe even years, or like myself, for decades in some capacity. And so we get very protective over it. So I thought, oh, like there must be a lot of feelings of competition and, oh, well, Bhuva, you're building something similar, and I know you're going to apply to this, and I'm going to apply to this, so we can't talk about it. And that was something really learned to let my guard down, and
yeah,
not to say that there aren't folks that are competitive, just like there are folks who are transactional, but in general, I found that for the most part, there really is space for everybody. And in general, like startup spaces, people are very welcoming. I mean, a lot of my referrals to pitch competitions, to investors, to potential partnership opportunities, or even to customers have come through fellow founders or fellow investors who said, hey, your startup's not the right fit for us, but we like what you're doing. And so let me introduce you to XYZ. And so I think it really is, one of the things that when I moved to Iowa, they were working really hard on building, and they still are, their startup ecosystem, right? And kind of the how do they get people connected? How do they support them? And I've also been in other spaces. I was in California for a long time where it's more well established. And there are pros and cons to both, but I think it really is the ecosystems that are around, and it's a big but a really small space. Like you really are not that far away from most investors, most fellow founders, most startups. I mean, it really is a big little ecosystem. And the other thing too that I've learned is, and I've learned it in very positive ways, but I know people have learned it in not positive ways, but somebody knows somebody else. And so if you say, oh, we just got a $500,000 commitment from Bhuva, Bhuva's writing the check and transferring the money tomorrow. And so I talk to the next investor, like, oh, I know this person who works with Bhuva. Let's see how that's going. And Bhuva's like, I mean, I like what they're doing, but I'm not writing a check, right? And so,
yeah,
I have heard stories on that, so which I like though. I do like that it's actually a very connected community of investors, founders, in the space. And the other thing too that I really have come to appreciate, and it was uncomfortable at first, and I'm still kind of unpacking this, to be honest with you. I think it's a little bit of working so long in large corporations where it's so hierarchical. And so when you're thinking about a founder and an investor relationship, to me at least, I think sometimes it felt hierarchical, not because I have to get their approval, not because they have to say yes, not because they sign my paycheck. I mean, I guess to an extent,
yeah,
but let's put that on the side. But I realized was when things are not going right, I was kind of nervous to tell them early. Like, how much do I share? Like, we just lost a contract that was going to be, the biggest contract of our time, and we were super excited about it, and I thought we were getting close. And it's like, how do you have that conversation? And what I've kind of come to realize is that as much as I can, to pull either a current investor or a potential investor, rather than us being on opposite sides of the table, is like, hey, come sit next to me and let's talk through this. And I'm not going to maybe give every detail, because you don't give every detail of what's happening inside, but maybe just a, hey, can you help me do a post-mortem on this experience? Because we had, this is kind of the sales cycle process. We had these 9 interactions. Here's where I thought things were good. Where along the way from your experience do you think I missed out? Right. And so basically, rather than it's the, we're on opposite sides, to try and actually be on the same side, because at the end of the day, like, whether it is a current investor or a potential investor, or obviously, a friend or colleague or mentor, is we want to win together. Right. And so, like, how do we
Yeah.
win better together?
I mean, I'm an investor and an entrepreneur myself. I work with a lot of startups in the fundraising space. One thing I always tell them is somebody knows somebody. So it's a very connected community. So just be upfront. Challenges, not a challenge. Working well, not working well. Maybe it's your perception. You are thinking that something is happening. It's not their commitment. So it happens quite a lot. I've seen it myself. So that's one of the pieces of advice I tell my startups also when they are fundraising, to uh, think that they know someone who knows someone who can share everything about what's going on, right? And from my investor community also, I've seen a lot of investors. If you are not a right fit, they always, I mean, 99%, unless something really goes wrong, introduce someone else who could be a direct investor or someone who can introduce a better fit investor for you at the moment. That has never gone wrong. Meaning, if investors like the product or solution, then probably their intent is, okay, I'm not investing because it's not a right fit for me at the moment, but someone else could definitely help you, right? And they can always connect with you later. So I couldn't agree more on everything you mentioned. I've lived through it. I've shared it with a lot of my startups. They've seen it firsthand as well, and it happens anywhere in the world. It's not just New York or California or Midwest. Happens. It's kind of the same everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. Now, do you remember your first customer? What did you feel about them? Did your product or service work the way it expected? I mean, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So obviously, and this is not to diminish any other customer, but obviously our first enterprise customer was huge. That was when that direct deposit, or that wire transfer hit. It was a big celebratory moment. But putting,
Mm.
an enterprise contract aside, and I'm going to remove friends and family from customers, because, yeah, getting a friend or family to give you, let's say, $195 is something. It's not the same as getting someone who you knew nothing about to pay you $195. Theoretical number, but I'm just putting it out there, right? So, yes, it was February of 2024. So we launched our clickable prototype at the end of 2023, and then we launched our MVP in February of 2024. And it actually was a customer that came through, to your point about connections. It was a mentor conversation when we were an accelerator program, whose best friend was navigating the journey with their parents, and
Wow.
said, would you mind an introduction? And literally a person just reached out and said, can I learn more? We had a 10-minute conversation, and they said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And so that was the most exciting, I think, more so than the first. At that point, we probably made about $1,000 up to that point, right? In the product sales. That was the one that I think was really, truly okay, maybe there's something here. And so I think that it's, again, enterprise is something because it's really a volume, right? It's much more about a bigger check size. But that $195 QuickBooks transaction was a very big moment for the team. So, yeah.
Yeah, you never forget your first customer, regardless of the check size, right? Because that proves and validates what you're building and keeps you going.
And we still
Now,
talk. we're still connected. I mean, that's the other piece of it too, is
Yeah.
they've obviously, because they had access to me, right? 24/7 essentially, at least through email or text message, because I was like, that's what we were doing as we were building. But I think that was really something that will always stick out. And, unfortunately, they lost both of their parents since the situation, right? So it's been something also too to validate what we continue to look at in the future.
Mm. Yeah, and those who are able to bet on you, like you, on your product and solution when you don't have traction, yet speaks a lot about them also, right?
Yeah.
Taking a chance on you. Now, in your sector, what are some emerging trends you are excited about? And I'm pretty sure you have some competition. How are you
Yep.
uniquely positioning yourself against your competitors?
Oh, Bhuva. It's the best and the hardest question. On the competition side. We absolutely have competition. And I mean, this is a really hot space right now. And by hot, I mean just kind
Yeah,
of the aging space, the caregiving space, and kind of to those pieces, whether it's death and dying or a death has occurred or it's caregiving for an aging, like it's a very big emerging space right now. And we have a lot of competitors, and we have some very well-funded competitors. I mean, our biggest competitor in the market, I think last I checked, has raised over 350 million. So they're very well backed.
really?
Yeah. So, it's exciting to see that. And it's also a little bit scary at times, but that
Mm,
we're not building the exact same thing, right? And so it's something that's like it's a piece of information. You can't let it stop you. Um, so differentiation is something that is ever evolving. And I think it really is one of the things that for me that I've really had to lean into is that so I shared the story of my grandparents and being involved as they were getting older and then after their passing. Well, something that came to me as I was building Tumbleweed that is kind of funny that I never really realized it at the beginning is I've been a family caregiver since I was 12 years old because
mm,
I'm the eldest sibling, so very common. But also, too, my mom lives with mental illness. She's severely mentally ill. And so she's been institutionalized many times throughout my childhood and my adult life. And so I've been a caregiver for her since I was very young. And so while mental illness is not the same journey as aging, there are related components, right? There's health
yeah,
involved, there's legal involved, there's insurance involved. So it's a different but similar journey. And so I do believe, at least for me, that one of the big differentiators is that I've been building this for 30 years, right? And by
mm,
building, I've been navigating the journey. I've been struggling with the process, the feelings of resentment and burden, and kind of all of those aspects. And so I do think that just my lived experience, as well as a number of my team members and other folks that we've talked to, is a big part of our differentiation. And then differentiation is also what's in the roadmap. It's the things that I can't share with you today, right?
yeah,
Those are the things that are truly going to set us apart as we continue to build. Now, we have to get more customers, we have to get more traction, more revenue to achieve all of those. But those are the things that are truly going to differentiate us in the market because early stage, it's hard to compete, in my opinion, as an early stage founder. It's hard to compete on a lot, right? And to truly differentiate when you're first getting into the market, it's really what are the little things you can do along the way. And so I think it really is. And so those are things I talk about with potential investors and our current investors, right? Is here are the things in the roadmap that we're building towards that are really going to start to differentiate us against our competitors and against our biggest competitor for sure.
yeah. And your personal story and your team's collaboration is going to inspire investors in the sense that you're going to keep going when it gets tough. If
Yeah.
you don't have that personal commitment or passion, you're
Yes.
not going to keep going when something hits tough. If it's an enterprise, they're going to change priorities, and this doesn't become a priority for them anymore. And that's what investors are also looking for. Investors are primarily looking for a founder fit versus a product fit, which is
Yeah.
also really important. But at a certain stage, it's more about the founder than about the product, right? Because you're investing in the person, anyone can have the same idea, but are you able to execute it for the long term? That's what matters, right?
Yeah.
So, Uh,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more on that.
And if I may, I know we're getting close to time, but I want to share this because I do want founders who are experiencing a similar situation to know they're not alone. And I just met with
Sure.
a founder I got connected with through another experience recently, earlier today, and she shared gratitude and said, "Please share with more founders." So to that point, and kind of pulling all the pieces together in my founder journey, when I first launched the startup, I had a boutique consulting practice, and
Mm,
but I stopped doing it because it required a lot of travel and a lot of pre-work. And so I drove for Uber on the side. And, I talked
yeah.
about a big sales contract, which was going to help with our investor conversations at the end of last year. And because those things did not come into fruition, I had to make a strategic decision to say, how much do you believe in this and how committed are you? And it was like, I'm going to protect our runway and I'm going to start driving for Uber again on the side. And so for founders who are doing gig work and doing multiple things while they're building and growing so that they can maintain product and growth and travel and sales and the rest of the team, you are not alone, right? I gig in the morning, I go to work, I gig at night, I gig at, right? It's just, and that's part of the journey. And so I share that, and I probably would have been embarrassed of that a couple of years ago, but as I've gotten more comfortable to say, like, this is part of the journey, and from an investor perspective, but also too from a founder perspective, like, I want people to know, like, that's how much I'm seeing things start to happen, and that's how much I believe in what we're doing. Because it'd be very easy for me to say, sorry, investors, sorry, customers, but bye, But it's like, no, like we're really just on the edge, and it's like this is just what I need to do to get us to that next milestone.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like you also mentioned, here you're putting your own life or business at stake for yourself instead of for someone else. So you're going to do everything you can because you believe in this, you're living through this, right? So that's one thing that all founders also would appreciate, where you do everything possible to protect your runway because you know that you're going to be successful. It's just a matter of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And quickly, also, I wanted to check on any KPIs that you prioritize more than others in your specific industry, because there are a lot of KPIs metrics out there everyone tracks. Too many KPIs these days, but are there important KPIs in your sector, important trends in your sector that you value more than others?
I think for us, one of the KPIs that I really have started to prioritize even more with our partners has actually been the way we get introduced, the way that their customers get introduced to us. So we're a B2B model in that relationship. So the insurance company is paying for their customers to have access. And so one of the
Mm,
things that we negotiated in the contract was, I don't need at the individual level, but can I get aggregate data about the click through rate, right? Essentially the sales funnel on their end. So I can see, like, where are people getting hung up on their end? Because I know the minute they make it to our side, right? Once they're a member of ours on our platform, then we can start to see engagement rates and usage rates and time spent and general questions asked in kind of aggregate for our users. But really, one of the things that I renegotiated when we were going into our next contract with that insurance company was, what is happening ahead, right? So that we can start to do a better job to help them funnel towards us. And so it really is the KPIs beyond usage, daily rates, that sort of things. It's really on their side. Who are we connecting with in their ecosystem that are then saying yes to choose us as their reward, right? What they call reward on their end, or a perk.
yeah, exactly. You can track when the customer is already your customer, but where do they fall off is something you need to understand because you have to fix that upstream, right?
Yep.
We are kind of coming up time. I just wanted to check in if there is anything else you'd like to share with our audience. How can people get in touch with you or Tumbleweed? What would you like to share as we close up?
Thank you, Bhuva. I appreciate it. This was wonderful. It's so good to be reconnected. And just to give a shout out, we were one of the candidates last year for the pitch competition. So please take Bhuva and the team up on that. It was a great event, met many fantastic people and great connections. So just wanted to do a shout out there. And then to keep in contact with me, very active on LinkedIn, Paul H. Richardson Jr. You can find me on most handles, most active on Facebook, Paul at tumbleweedplan.com, tumbleweedplan.com, like you're planning ahead. But yeah, reach out. And we also, too, we launched last year the Sandwiched podcast, which is all about folks who are navigating caregiving or supporting an aging person, as well as also trying to live their life, kids, pets, partners, spouses. So they're sandwiched between it all. So please do check out the Sandwiched podcast. Thank you, Bhuva.
Thanks, Paul. I do keep tabs on the Sandwiched podcast as well. So it's a great conversation. Thanks for doing that as well while you're building and managing Tumbleweed. Thanks so much for taking time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks everyone for joining us. And if you're watching this after the recording, if you're a fintech startup, don't miss out the fundraising event from Wallet Max. We have startup pitch competition and investor panel discussion. It's on April 20th as we kick off the New York FinTech Week. The tickets are now live. You can see the Luma registration link scrolling below on the screen. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks again, Paul, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.